"It's just business, Luna," Silas whispered, though his eyes never climbed higher than the silver embroidery on her bodice. The scent of ozone and crushed lilies filled the ballroom, a physical manifestation of the fated bond snapping. Luna felt the phantom tear in her chest before she saw the actual puncture marks. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that sounded like a serrated blade, as Silas's canine sank into the socialite's neck, marking his chosen queen for the sake of an oil merger. The connection Luna had cherished since childhood withered into ash. Across the marble floor, 3 pairs of predatory eyes tracked the color draining from her face. The Alpha Kings didn't see a rejected mate, they saw a goddess finally up for grabs. The crystal chandelier above the ballroom floor seemed to vibrate with the frequency of Luna's breaking heart. It was a silent demolition. In the world of the Wolf Elite, the marking ceremony was supposed to be a sacred union, a public declaration of a soul-deep tie. But Silas, the boy she climbed oak trees with, the man who had promised her a forever that hadn't even started, had traded her soul for a seat on the Continental Council. The woman he was marking, Lady Alara of the Southern Isles, let out a soft, triumphant moan. The sound was a whip crack against Luna's skin. Every person in the room knew Luna was Silas's fated mate. They had seen the way their scents intertwined like wood smoke and honey for years. Now those same people were looking away, their eyes suddenly very interested in their champagne flutes or the gold leaf on the ceiling. Luna didn't scream, she didn't cry. The shock was a thick, cold balm that paralyzed her vocal cords. She watched the golden glow of the mark settle into Alara's skin, a permanent brand of betrayal. Silas finally looked up, his eyes flashing a guilty amber before hardening into the cold sapphire of a businessman. He didn't offer an apology, he offered a dismissal. "Luna, I'll have your things sent to your father's estate by morning," he said, his voice amplified by the sudden, suffocating silence of the room. Luna took a single step back. Her heels clicked against the white marble, a lonely, hollow sound. She felt the eyes of the 3 kings then, the rulers of the northern, eastern, and western territories. They sat on a raised dais, a triumvirate of power that usually remained aloof from the petty dramas of the lesser alphas, but tonight their attention was fixed entirely on her. Cassian, the king of the north, was the first to move. He was a man of shadows and steel, his reputation built on a foundation of ruthless efficiency and a silence that could crush bones. He stood, his dark suit absorbing the light of the room. He didn't look at Silas, he didn't look at the new bride, he looked at Luna as if she were the only living thing in a room full of ghosts. "The bond is severed," Cassian remarked, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in Luna's very marrow. It wasn't a question, it was an observation of a tactical opportunity. "It was a choice," Silas snapped, trying to reclaim his dominance. "A necessary one for the pack." Cassian ignored him, stepping down from the dais. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Luna felt the heat of him before he even reached her. He smelled of cedarwood and the sharp, clean scent of a coming winter storm. He stopped exactly 3 feet away, close enough to be intimate, far enough to be a threat. A man who throws away a diamond to keep a handful of gravel deserves the poverty that follows, Cassian said softly, his eyes locked on Luna's. Luna found her voice, though it sounded like it belonged to someone else. "I am not an object to be appraised, King Cassian." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, a dangerous, beautiful thing. "No, you are a sovereign without a throne, and the world is very hungry for a queen." Before Luna could respond, the other 2 kings were moving. Julian of the East, elegant and serpentine, with his silver blonde hair and calculating eyes, and Valerius of the West, a man who looked like he'd been carved out of a mountain and dressed in Italian silk. The tension in the room shifted from the scandal of the marking to something far more volatile, a hunt. Luna realized then that she wasn't just a rejected mate. She was the catalyst for a war. She turned on her heel, her silk dress swirling around her legs, and bolted for the terrace. She needed air. She needed to be away from the scent of blood and betrayal. But as she reached the stone railing, the heavy footsteps behind her told her that the kings weren't finished. The hunger had just begun. The night air was a shock to Luna's lungs, crisp and smelling of the pine forest that bordered the estate. She gripped the stone balustrade so hard the rough granite bit into her palms. Below, the valley was a sea of twinkling lights, a modern world built atop ancient pharaoh foundations. "You can't hide in the dark forever, Luna." She didn't have to turn to know it was Julian. His voice was like silk sliding over a blade, polished, expensive, and sharp. He leaned against a pillar, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He looked less like a wolf and more like a hedge fund manager, but the way his pupils dilated in the moonlight betrayed his nature. "I'm not hiding," Luna said, her voice shaking despite her best efforts. "I'm mourning. There's a difference. Mourning is for those who lost something of value," Julian countered, taking a slow sip. "You lost a weight around your neck." Silas was a gutter alpha with aspirations beyond his bloodline. He marked a girl with a trust fund because he couldn't handle a mate with a soul. Luna finally turned, her eyes narrowed. And what do you want, Julian? To offer me a better portfolio? To tell me how much my soul is worth on the open market? Julian stepped into the light. I want stability. The East is thriving, but it lacks a heart. You have a lineage that traces back to the first moon. Your rejection hasn't weakened you. It's made you the most valuable free agent in the history of our kind. Free agent, Luna echoed, a bitter laugh escaping her. Is that what I am? A trade to be negotiated? In the eyes of the law, yes, a new voice boomed. Valerius stepped out from the shadows of the French doors. He was a head taller than Julian, his presence a physical weight that seemed to displace the very oxygen on the terrace. But in the eyes of the West, you are a challenge. And I have never lost a challenge. Valerius walked right into her personal space, ignoring Julian's warning growl. He reached out, his thumb brushing the spot on her neck, where Silas's mark should have been. The skin there was unblemished, but it throbbed with a phantom ache. The scent of the rejection is still on you, Valerius whispered, his voice thick with a raw, unbridled intensity. It smells like rain on hot asphalt. It's intoxicating. Luna pushed his hand away, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Stay back, both of you. I'm not a prize for your collection. You don't understand the optics, Luna, Julian said, his voice regaining its analytical chill. By marking another, Silas has essentially declared you unclaimable by fated standards. But the blood in your veins says otherwise. Whoever holds your hand holds the keys to the High Council. We are 3 kings who have spent a century in a stalemate. You are the tiebreaker. I am a person, Luna shouted, the sound echoing off the stone walls. From the doorway, Cassian watched them. He didn't join the fray. He didn't offer threats or market analyses. He simply stood there, his hands in his pockets, his gaze heavy and unreadable. He looked like a man watching a storm he had already predicted. The news is already out, Cassian said quietly. The paparazzi are at the gates. The blogs are calling you the ghost mate. By tomorrow morning, every ambitious alpha from here to the coast will be coming for you. You can't stay at your father's house. He's already negotiating your dowry with the southern conglomerates. The betrayal hit Luna anew. Her father, the man who was supposed to protect her, was already selling her. I have nowhere to go, she whispered, the reality finally shattering her composure. You have 3 choices, Cassian said, stepping forward. The North offers protection through silence. The East offers protection through wealth. The West offers protection through force. And what do I have to give in return? Wakaot, Luna asked, her voice cracking. All 3 kings spoke at once, their voices a discordant symphony of desire. Your presence, Julian said. Your loyalty, Valerius demanded. Your time, Cassian finished. Luna looked from one to the other, the strategist, the warrior, and the shadow. Behind them, inside the ballroom, she could hear Silas laughing. He was celebrating his new life, blissfully unaware that the woman he discarded was about to start a fire that would burn his world to the ground. I choose none of you, Luna said, her jaw setting. I'm leaving. She pushed past them, running toward the stairs that led to the gardens. She didn't have a plan, but she had a car, and she had a burning need to be anywhere but under the hunger of 3 kings. The garden was a labyrinth of manicured hedges and hidden alcoves, designed for secret trysts and political whispers. Luna ran, her heels sinking into the damp earth, the hem of her expensive dress catching on rose thorns. She didn't care, she just needed to reach the valet, but the garden wasn't empty. She rounded a corner and nearly collided with a wall of muscle. It wasn't one of the kings, it was Silas. He was standing by a fountain, a cigarette in his hand, looking decidedly less triumphant than he had 10 minutes ago. Luna, he said, his voice strained. Move, Silas. Listen to me. He stepped into her path, his scent, once her favorite thing in the world, now making her stomach churn. The marking, it's a formality. Alara knows we can still see each other. I'll set you up in the city. You'll have everything you want. Luna stopped. The sheer audacity of the offer felt like a physical slap. You want me to be your mistress? After you rejected the bond in front of the entire council? It's the modern way, Luna. Nobody cares about fated anymore. It's about power. It's about the Pack's future. If I hadn't made this deal, the Southern Packs would have choked us out of the market. You sold our soul for a market share, Luna said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. And now you want me to be the secret you keep in a penthouse? You never knew me at all. Luna, be reasonable. Where are you gonna go? Your father won't take you back without a contract. You're a liability now. She's a liability to you, a voice growled from the darkness. Valerius emerged from the shadows like a panther. He didn't look like a king now. He looked like a predator. He stepped between Luna and Silas, his shoulders broad enough to block out the world. King Valerius, Silas stammered, his alpha bravado vanishing instantly. This is a private matter between a man and his mate. You marked another woman, Silas, Valerius said, his voice a low, terrifying rumble. By the laws of the moon, you have no mate. You have a wife, and you have a void where your honor used to be. You do not speak to her again. I was just making sure she was safe, Silas lied, backing away. She is under the protection of the Triple Crown. Julian's voice came from the other side of the fountain. He was checking his watch, looking bored, but the way his hand rested near the hilt of the ceremonial dagger at his belt said otherwise. Which means if you breathe in her direction, you'll find your trade routes redirected to the bottom of the ocean. Silas looked between the two kings, his face pale. He realized too late the caliber of the men he had just handed his mate to. He turned and fled toward the house, his tail metaphorically between his legs. Luna stood shaking, her hands tucked into her armpits. I didn't ask for your help. We didn't offer help, Cassian said, appearing at the end of the path. He had a dark wool coat in his hands. He walked over and draped it over her shoulders. The weight of it was grounding. We offered a reality check. You are in danger, Luna, not just from Silas's stupidity, but from what you represent. And what is that? Luna asked, looking up at him. Hope, Cassian said, his eyes softening for the briefest of seconds. A fated mate who survives a rejection and keeps her dignity. That's a story that changes the power structure of our world. The alphas who rule by fear don't want you to exist. They want you broken so their own mates don't get ideas. Luna looked at the three of them. They were rivals. They were dangerous. They were hungry. But as she looked at the coat Cassian had given her, and the way Valerius stood guard, and the way Julian was already scanning the perimeter for threats, she realized she couldn't fight this alone. I won't be a wife, she said, her voice firming. I won't be a mistress, and I won't be a political pawn. Then what will you be? Julian asked, genuinely curious. Luna looked toward the gates where the flashes of cameras were already visible in the distance. Jodel, I'll be the woman who breaks the system. If you want me, you don't claim me. You earn me, and you do it on my terms. The three kings exchanged a look. It was a silent agreement, a pact made in the moonlight. The hunt is on, then. Valerius grinned, a flash of white teeth. It's not a hunt, Luna corrected, stepping toward the waiting car. It's an audition. And so far, you're all failing. She didn't look back as she got into the car, but she felt their eyes on her. 3 kings, 3 territories, and one woman who had just realized that her broken bond wasn't an end. It was an opening. The car ride was a blur of neon lights and the rhythmic thrum of high-performance tires against the wet asphalt. Luna stared out the window, watching her reflection in the glass. She looked the same dark hair, same wide eyes, but she felt like a hollowed-out tree standing only by the grace of the surrounding forest. The Ghostmate headline had already flickered across her phone screen 3 times. The car didn't head toward her father's estate. It pulled into the subterranean garage of the Zenith, a towering spire of obsidian glass and steel that served as the neutral ground for the Alpha Council. This is a gilded cage, Luna said as the door was opened by a silent security detail. It is a fortress, Cassian corrected, stepping out of the car behind her. He hadn't left her side since the terrace. At your father's house, you are a commodity. Here, you are a guest of the crown. There is a difference in the paperwork, so the penthouse was a masterclass in cold, modern elegance. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, but the interior was all soft grays and muted lighting. Julian and Valerius were already there, standing at opposite ends of a sprawling marble kitchen island, looking like they were preparing for a board meeting rather than a rescue. Your father called, Julian said, not looking up from a tablet. He's filed a recovery of assets motion with the council. He claims that since your fated bond was never consummated and Silas has marked another, you revert to his guardianship. He's already promised your hand to a textile magnate in the south to smooth over the ripples Silas caused. Luna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Recovery of assets? I am his daughter. To a man like your father, daughters are just currency with a heartbeat, Valerius growled, his hand tightening around a crystal glass until it looked ready to shatter. I've already moved a battalion to the border of his lands. If he tries to enforce that motion, he'll find his assets protected by Western fire. No, Luna said, her voice sharp. No wars, not for me. That's exactly what Silas wants, to be the victim of a hostile takeover so he can look like the rational one. She walked to the window, her breath fogging the glass. The city looks so small from up here. I need to know the truth. Why me? There are hundreds of unbonded omegas and high-ranking females. Why are 3 kings sitting in a kitchen debating my guardianship? The silence that followed was heavy. It was Cassian who spoke, his voice coming from right behind her. He didn't touch her, but his heat radiated against her back. Because the moon doesn't make mistakes, Luna. She makes matches, and when a match as strong as yours is discarded, the energy doesn't just vanish, it stays in the atmosphere. You are a source of pure, unrefined power right now. If an alpha claims you, really claims you with your consent, they don't just get a mate, they get a legacy. And if I don't choose, then you remain a ghost, Julian said softly. And eventually the void left by Silas will start to pull at your sanity. A broken bond is a slow poison, Luna. We aren't just here to win a prize. We're here to offer an antidote. Luna turned to face them. They looked so certain, so powerful. But as she looked at the empty space on her neck where a mark should be, she realized the poison was already working. A sharp, sudden pain flared in her chest, a phantom echo of Silas's heartbeat. Somewhere across the city, he was sleeping next to another woman and her body was still trying to find its rhythm. She slumped against the glass, her knees finally giving way. Before she could hit the floor, Cassian's arms were around her, solid and smelling of winter. The next morning didn't bring peace, it brought a formal invitation. Julian had transformed the dining room into a sensory experience. The smell of fresh espresso and expensive pastries filled the air, and soft classical music played from hidden speakers. He sat at the head of the table, dressed in a charcoal suit, looking every bit the king of the East. "Sit, Luna. We have much to discuss," he said, gesturing to the chair on his right. Luna sat, her body feeling heavy. The ghost ache had settled into a dull throb in her bones. She noticed that Valerius and Cassian were absent. "Where are the others?" "Yeah, Valerius is at the gym, burning off his urge to punch your father," Julian said with a thin smile. And Cassian is... Cassian. He's likely in the shadows, watching the perimeter. He doesn't trust the quiet. Julian pushed a folder across the table toward her. "I don't offer battalions, Luna. I offer information. This is Silas's financial portfolio. I had my analyst look into it this morning." Luna opened the folder. Columns of red ink stared back at her. "He's broke?" "Worse. He's leveraged his pack's ancestral lands against a series of bad tech investments. The Southern merger wasn't a strategic move, it was a bailout. Alara's family owns the debt. He didn't just mark her for power, he marked her because she was the only one holding the leash." Luna felt a strange mix of pity and disgust. "He told me it was for the future of the pack." "He lied," Julian said, his eyes locking onto hers. "Silas is a man who fears the dark, so he burns his own house down for light. In the East we build, we plan. If you were my queen, you would never have to worry about the red. You would have a seat at the table, not a spot on the ledger." He reached across the table, his fingers grazing the back of her hand. His skin was cool, his touch precise. "I can offer you a life where your mind is respected. We could restructure the council together. You wouldn't be a ghost maid anymore. You'd be the architect of the new order." The offer was tempting. It was clean. It was rational. It was everything the fated bond hadn't been. But as she looked into Julian's gray eyes, she saw the calculation. He didn't just want her, he wanted the architect version of her. "And if I decide I don't want to build anything?" Luna asked. "If I just want to be whole again?" Julian's expression didn't flicker. "Wholeness is a byproduct of purpose, Luna. A broken heart heals faster when the hands are busy." The door to the penthouse swung open and Valerius stormed in, still wearing a sweat-soaked t-shirt that clung to his massive frame. He looked at Julian's hand on Luna's and let out a low, vibrating growl. "Stop trying to bore her into submission, Julian," Valerius snapped. "I am offering her a future, Valerius, something more than a cave and a conquest." Valerius walked over, ignoring the king of the East entirely. He knelt beside Luna's chair, his presence overwhelming the room. He smelled of salt and adrenaline. "I don't care about ledgers," Valerius said, his voice raw, "and I don't care about architects. I saw you in that ballroom, Luna. I saw the way you stood your ground when the world fell apart. You're a warrior who's been told she's a victim. Come to the West. I won't give you a seat at a table. I'll give you a kingdom that will fight to the death to keep you smiling. You want to be whole? Stop thinking. Start feeling again." He took her other hand, his palm rough and warm. The contrast was staggering. Julian's cool logic on one side, Valerius's burning intensity on the other. Luna felt like she was being pulled in two directions, her soul a wishbone about to snap. "Enough," a voice commanded from the hallway. Cassian stood there, his coat over his arm. He looked tired, his dark eyes shadowed. "The paparazzi have breached the garage and Silas is on the news. He's giving an interview." The television screen showed Silas sitting on a plush velvet sofa, Alara clinging to his arm like a decorative vine. He looked polished, his hair perfectly coiffed, but Luna could see the slight tremor in his hands. "It was a difficult decision," Silas was saying, his voice modulated for maximum sympathy. "Luna and I, Our bond was a childhood relic. It was beautiful, but it wasn't enough to sustain a modern pact. Lady Alara represents the future. We wish Luna the best, and we hope she finds the peace she needs to move on from this obsession. Obsession? Luna whispered, the word tasting like bile. The interviewer leaned in. There are rumors, Alpha Silas, that the three kings have taken an interest in your former mate. Some say she's being held at the zenith against her will. Silas sighed, a masterful performance of regret. Luna is a sensitive soul. I fear she may be being manipulated by men who see her as a political tool. I only hope the council sees fit to return her to her family where she can receive the care she needs. He's setting the stage for a forced commitment, Julian noted, his voice ice cold. By framing you as mentally unstable due to the rejection trauma, he can invalidate your right to choose a new mate. Valerius looked like he was about to put his fist through the screen. I'll kill him. I'll go there now and end this. No, Cassian said, his eyes fixed on Luna. That's what he wants. He's baiting us. If any of the three kings attack Silas now, it proves his point that we are aggressors manipulating a fragile woman. Luna stood up, her shaking hands curling into fists. The phantom ache in her chest intensified, but this time it wasn't a sorrowful throb. It was a sharp, jagged heat. Through the remnants of the bond, she could feel Silas's fear. He was terrified of her. He was terrified that if she found her footing, she would realize how small he truly was. I'm not fragile, Luna said, her voice growing stronger. And I'm not going to his father's house, and I'm not going to a care facility. She looked at the three kings. You want to earn me? Fine, Silas just gave his version of the story. I want to give mine, but I won't do it in a studio. I want to do it on the steps of the council hall tonight. The council hall is a lion's den, Julian warned. Silas has friends there. So do I, Luna said, looking directly at Cassian. I have three kings who claim to want me. If you can't get me through those doors and keep the cameras rolling, then you're not the men you say you are. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Valerius's face. Julian nodded, already pulling out his phone to coordinate the media. Cassian walked over to Luna, his gaze searching her as he leaned down, his voice a whisper intended only for her. The ghost mate curse works both ways, Luna. If you feel him, he feels you. Tonight, don't just speak. Make him feel the weight of what he threw away. Let the bond bleed him dry. Luna shivered. For the first time, she didn't see Cassian as a protector. She saw him as a strategist of the soul. He wasn't just offering her a home, he was offering her a weapon. Prepare the car, Luna said, her eyes turning toward the door. I have a funeral to attend. My own. As she walked out of the room, she didn't see the look the three kings exchanged, a silent acknowledgement that the woman they were pursuing was no longer the girl they had seen in the ballroom. The ghost was starting to haunt her own life, and she was far more terrifying than any king. The council hall loomed like a neoclassical nightmare, white marble pillars glowing under the harsh artificial lights of 100 news cameras. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and the heavy, humid musk of hundreds of wolves. This was the heart of their society's law, and tonight it was a stage. Luna stepped out of the black sedan, and the world exploded in white light. The paparazzi's flashes were a barrage, but she didn't flinch. She was flanked by the three kings, a formation of power that the world had never seen. To her left, Julian the strategist looked as if he were walking a red carpet, his expression one of bored elegance. To her right, Valerius, the warrior, was a wall of muscle and menace, his eyes scanning the crowd with lethal intent. Behind her, always in the shadow, was Cassian. He didn't have to look menacing. His reputation did the work for him. Stay centered. Cassian's voice was a low vibration in her ear. The bond is screaming because he is near. Use that scream. Turn it into a roar. He was right. As they ascended the steps, a sharp, searing heat blossomed in Luna's chest. Silas was at the top of the stairs, flanked by council elders and his new, marked bride. Alara looked terrified, her hand trembling as she gripped Silas's arm. Silas, however, looked desperate. He saw the kings, and he saw the woman he had discarded, now looking like a goddess of war in a dress the color of dried blood. "Luna!" Silas shouted, stepping forward as the camera swiveled toward him. "This has gone far enough. You are clearly under duress. Elders, look at this. 3 kings holding a rejected female captive. This is a violation of the high code." The crowd murmured. The elders looked skeptical. Luna felt the phantom tug of Silas's heart. He was trying to use the remnants of their connection to project a feeling of safety to her, a mental manipulation meant to make her run to him. Luna stopped 10 feet below him. She looked up, and for the first time in years, she didn't see the boy she loved. She saw a small man drowning in a large suit. "The only violation here, Silas, is your attempt to rewrite the truth." Luna's voice was amplified by the microphones the king's teams had strategically placed. It was clear, resonant, and devoid of the fragility Silas had claimed. "I am not a captive. I am a witness." "A witness to what?" an elder demanded. "To the death of an era," Luna said, her eyes never leaving Silas's. "You marked another for a bailout. You broke a fated bond not for love, but for a ledger. And then you tried to have me committed because you were afraid I would tell the world how little you are worth." "She's delusional," Silas barked, but his voice cracked. "The rejection trauma has fractured her mind." "Then let the bond decide." Julian stepped forward, his voice smooth as glass. "According to the ancient rites, a rejected mate can call for a severance of truth. If Luna is as fractured as you say, the feedback will destroy her, but if she is whole, it will destroy the one who lied." Silas turned pale. The severance of truth was a ritual rarely used because of its lethality. It required the two former mates to touch, forcing their souls to reconcile the truth of their actions. "I won't participate in this barbarism," Silas said, backing away. "Afraid, Alpha?" Valerius laughed, the sound like grinding stones. "A king of the West doesn't back down from a challenge. Why should a hero of the pack?" The cameras were rolling, the world was watching, Silas was trapped. He looked at Alara, then at the elders, and finally at Luna. He thought he could win. He thought his alpha blood was stronger than her grief. "Fine," Silas spat. "Let the world see your madness, Luna." The air on the council steps turned frigid as the elders formed a circle around Luna and Silas. The three kings stood just outside the perimeter, their presence keeping the peace, though the air vibrated with their suppressed power. "Place your hands over each other's hearts," the lead elder commanded. Luna stepped into Silas's space. The scent of him, the wood smoke and honey, was there, but it was corrupted now, smelling of rot and stale copper. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but it wasn't the rhythm of love. It was the drum of an execution. Silas reached out, his hand shaking. When his palm touched the silk over her heart, a jolt of pure agony shot through Luna. It was the ghost bond, the severed connection, lashing out like a wounded animal. She gasped, her knees buckling, but a dark, steady gaze from Cassian held her upright. "Make him feel the weight," Cassian had said. Luna closed her eyes. She stopped fighting the pain. Instead, she opened the floodgates. She let Silas feel every second of the ballroom betrayal. She let him feel the cold marble under her heels, the sound of the crowd's pity, the hollow emptiness of her father's house, and the sharp, jagged fear of being hunted. But more than that, she let him feel her new strength. She showed him the shadow of the north, the wealth of the east, and the fire of the west. She showed him that she was no longer his. Silas let out a strangled cry. His eyes flew open and they were no longer amber. They were bloodshot and leaking tears of pure agony. The ghost bond wasn't just reflecting her pain, it was amplifying his guilt. "Stop," he wheezed. "Luna, stop." "Is this the madness you spoke of, Silas?" Luna whispered, her voice a ghost in his mind. "Or is it just the truth?" The marking on Alara's neck began to glow a sickly, bruised purple. The magic of a chosen mark couldn't survive the truth of a betrayed, fated bond. Alara screamed, clutching her throat as the mark Silas had given her began to fade, the skin blistering as the lie was rejected by her own body. "He lied to you too, Alara," Luna said, her voice carrying to the cameras. "He didn't mark you to save the pack, he marked you to save his bank account." With a final violent surge of energy, the connection between Luna and Silas snapped. It wasn't a slow wither this time, it was an explosion. A shockwave of silver light erupted from their joined hands, throwing Silas backward into the council doors. Luna stood in the center of the circle, her hair wine-blown, her eyes glowing with a silver light that had never been there before. The ache in her chest was gone, the ghost was dead. Silas lay on the ground, his alpha aura shattered. He looked diminished, his scent gone sour and weak. The elders looked at him with disgust. The recovery of assets motion was forgotten. Silas was no longer a leader, he was a pariah. "The bond is dead," the lead elder announced, his voice echoing in the stunned silence. "And the alpha of the White Oak Pack is stripped of his title for deception and cowardice. Luna of the First Moon, you are free." Luna didn't look at Silas as the security detail dragged him away. She didn't look at Alara, who was being tended to by medics. She looked at the three men who had stood by her when she was nothing but a shadow. They were waiting for her. The hunt was over. The audition was just beginning. 3 days later, the world was still reeling. Silas's pack had been absorbed into a coalition, and Luna's father had fled to the south to avoid the king's inquiries into his business practices. Luna sat on the terrace of the zenith, but this time she wasn't gripping the railing in fear. She was draped in a silk robe, a cup of tea in her hand, watching the sunrise paint the city in hues of gold and violet. The glass door slid open. One by one the kings joined her. Julian was first, carrying a tablet that showed the morning's markets. "The East is ready for you, Luna. We've already drafted the charter for the new council. Your seat is waiting." Valerius followed, his boots heavy on the stone. "The West doesn't care about charters. My people are already howling your name. They saw the severance. They want a queen who can break a king." Finally, Cassian stepped out. He didn't bring promises or accolades. He just brought his presence, the quiet, steady weight of the North. Luna looked at them, the strategist, the warrior, and the shadow. Any one of them could give her a life of unimaginable power. Any one of them could protect her from ever feeling that ghost ache again. "You said it was an audition," Julian reminded her, his eyes softer than she had ever seen them. "Who have you chosen?" Luna set her tea down. She stood up and walked to the edge of the terrace, looking out at the vast, waking world. "I spent my whole life waiting for the moon to choose for me," Luna said, her voice steady. "I waited for a fated bond to define my worth. I watched Silas mark another because I thought I had no power of my own without him. But these last few days I realized something." She turned to face the three most powerful men in the world. "I don't need a bond to be whole, and I don't need a king to be a queen." Valerius's jaw tightened. Julian looked like he'd just lost a high-stakes trade, but Cassian just tilted his head, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. However, Luna continued, a playful spark in her eyes. "I find that I quite enjoy the company of kings, and the world is a dangerous place for a woman who just shattered the status quo." "So?" Valerius stepped forward. What's the verdict?" "I won't choose one of you," Luna said, "because choosing one means I accept the old rules that a woman belongs to a territory. I am the queen of the eclipse. I belong to the shadows between your borders." She walked toward them, stopping in the center of their triangle. "If you want me, you will rule with me, not as my owners and not as my masters. We will form a new triumvirate, 3 kings and 1 queen who keeps them from killing each other. We will rebuild this society from the ground up." Julian laughed, a genuine sound of appreciation. "A political merger of the 4 largest territories is madness. It's impossible." "It's a legacy," Cassian said, stepping into the circle. He reached out and took Luna's hand, not to claim it, but to acknowledge it. "And I have always preferred the impossible." Valerius grinned, his competitive spirit finding a new, much larger target. "The world won't know what hit it." Luna looked from one to the other. She saw the hunger was still there, the desire to be the one she loved most. But it was tempered now by a profound respect. She had watched her fated mate mark another, and she had survived. Now she would watch the world change at her command. She wasn't a ghost anymore. She was the storm. In the end, Luna didn't just find a new mate. She found her own sovereignty. The betrayal of Silas was not the end of her story, but the fire that forged her into something greater than a simple fated match. She remains a symbol of hope for every rejected wolf, a queen who proved that worth is not given by the moon, but claimed by the heart. If you enjoyed this journey of betrayal, power, and reclamation, please don't forget to like this story, share it with your fellow readers, and subscribe for more dramatic tales of the supernatural elite. Your support keeps the fire burning.